honestly, ever since Left Behind, Rise of the Antichrist, my brain has been. Should we talk about it?
No.
No? Okay.
Well, by talking about it, we give it power.
Well, here we
give
go.
The Antichrist power. Yeah, here we go. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth.
Oh, you got to fill us in on the first 10 minutes of the movie.
Okay, well, I'll introduce Boys Bible Study, and then we'll talk about this, because I want to complain about the fact that they started right at 7, which was very annoying.
Okay.
Welcome back to Boys Bible Study. We're here, very special episode. We're talking about a brand new movie, a Christian movie, hitting the theaters, which we don't frequently get to do. Hotly anticipated coverage after our month of watching. Ow. Ow. That's me in hell. Like grabbing the railing on the way down to the too hot tub where they torture me in. I'm grabbing the railing. I'm like, ow, ow. All the railings are they're like pool railings that have been in the sun for too long. But the movie this week, after 3 weeks of watching the original Left Behind trilogy to catch us up with the story and characters, we are happy to cover the brand new newest installment in Left Behind, directed and co-produced by Kevin Sorbo and starring him and some of his family. Left Behind, Rise of the Antichrist, which just had its brief theatrical run this past weekend.
Did anybody confirm if this is or is not a sequel to the Nicolas Cage Left Behind? Because I had read that it is a direct sequel to it.
That is a great question, because I was wondering that watching too. I did not look into it at all, but it felt like thematically they were following from there, but also kind of counting on you forgetting that you saw it, other than the rapture part.
Yeah, because I don't really remember what happens in that movie other than the rapture. Like, I can't remember if it really delved into any of the Antichrist stuff at all.
Yeah, it's really tough because actually it's so, in a way, in character with the sort of like reboot culture of our time, because it almost reminded me of like The Matrix 4 in a way, although I actually liked The Matrix 4, but where it was like, you basically just had to have a familiarity with the universe. Like if, it was sort of like running the wiki, like the fan wiki of the films through like an AI that regurgitated like a new plot set in our times that references like things that happened from the past few years.
Yeah, it almost just felt like they were thinking like, we don't need to do the origin story again. You all know it.
Yeah.
Props to them for that. How many fucking times do we have to learn like Spider-Man gets bit by a spider?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Every time they reboot a fucking superhero movie, they're like, oh, Batman's got to have his parents die.
Yes.
Yep. And
we know that's practically the fucking Bible at this point.
Yeah. That is our modern day Bible.
Practically.
And if there's one thing that Bible movies don't like to do, it's repeat themselves. Or tell us Jesus' origin story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's a good point.
That's a story I never get tired of myself personally, but
it was also smart too,
MCU.
because the Nicolas Cage Left Behind I thought was a little phoned in overall, unfortunately. However, one scene they did amazingly was the actual rapture scene, because that is the most product placement I have seen in any scene, let alone a rapture scene. You remember that? It like happens in the mall food court, and you can just see like the names of
remember it being
in
in the
background.
mall. Yeah, but I don't really remember the specifics of it.
Yeah. Getting raptured in front of Sparrow and Chick-fil-A or whatever.
That's so real. That's so real to me.
So they knew they weren't going to beat that. So smart.
Yeah. This movie, Left Behind, Rise of the Antichrist, we didn't have to meet each character truly for the first time, because they did understand that their audience was going to be more niche, going to be more Christian, and there was going to be at least like a passing familiarity with this like, Left Behind series, which at this point is basically like a superhero movie franchise, given how many times it's been rebooted and permutated, and the fact that it's IP that's been in the cultural consciousness for like 20 plus years, So I agree. Credits to them that they didn't feel the need to do that. But
Did they?
well, that's actually a really good point.
Yeah.
So Julian
I'm
and I,
dying to get to this part.
Julian and I were on time in LA standards for this movie.
By any movie standards.
By any movie, we got there at like 7:06.
We walked into the theater
Oh,
at
okay.
7:10.
I bought-
think, at the latest.
Okay, I bought a double whiskey Coke. I did.
Yeah.
And that took a minute because
At
know,
McGuffin's.
at
AMC
McGuffin's,
bar.
the bar within AMC. That took a minute. But no, I think we parked in the garage like right at 7.
Yeah.
We got in, we bought our tickets, but we ended up sneaking in because the line just to get checked in was so long that we actually like ducked through a gap in the rope, even though
Right.
I had legally
Nice work.
purchased my tickets. But we were like, what the fuck is this? So we just walked into the theater because no one was watching. I, of course,
The
stopped
system
at
with
McGuffin's.
That fucking theater is so fucked
That theater
up.
was
They
chaotic.
literally had like 4 self-checkout kiosks for tickets.
Yeah.
And then one person who had to check every single ticket like 3 feet from the kiosk.
There was a long
So it was just
line.
an insane bottleneck right there.
It's really
Stupid.
weird.
Which AMC is that?
This is the Norwalk AMC.
Okay.
We went to Norwalk because they were the only. This is the final showing of the movie in the Los Angeles
Yeah.
area. Every other showing on Sunday was at 3 p.m. We found the one within like 25 miles that was at 7 p.m. and we went to it. So this is the final Left Behind
Yeah.
show in Los Angeles.
The snack counter was also fully automated, and then they would just like yell out a number with your ticket on it. But there was like no one to like wave you when a kiosk was open, and they had like the Stubbs members and the regular moviegoers next to each other. And normally, if you're in like the Stubbs line, somebody will be like, "Oh, you get to like cut everybody."
Yeah.
But there was just like complete chaos.
It's chaos. It's
Yeah.
in many ways a simulator of what the world will be like when all the Christians leave.
Yeah.
Yeah. Half the theater staff will be gone.
Yeah, that was our experience at the AMC Norwalk. But yeah, still, I think we did an admirable job of getting there
We did
on
great.
time. And I was so surprised when we got there and they were like in we got in the movie midway through Buck's interview with that like expert
Yeah.
who was
Oh,
like
okay.
repeating like COVID talking points, but referring to the rapture and disappearances.
The vanishings.
The vanishings.
That was the
yeah.
and the Vanishing Accountability Program, which is the funniest
Yes.
name in the movie.
Oh, I
That
missed
was
that.
awesome.
Oh, I missed that.
I think
Oh,
I think
man.
we did hear that, but it's just there were
I
a
went to
lot
the
of details.
restroom right at the
Oh,
start
okay.
also.
Oh,
So I
okay.
missed an additional
I
3
took-
minutes.
I took notes, but I also took them in the dark, so some of them are more intelligible than others. Anyway, go on. Scott.
I took all mine later after I watched the movie.
Oh, good thinking.
That is the first full scene in the movie, fortunately.
Okay.
And
Can I guess what happened before was a bunch of newsreel footage with the priest voiceover?
how did you know?
I feel like every single Kevin Sorbo movie we have watched has started with newsreel, like stock footage of newsreels.
Yeah.
I'm guessing
No, it
there
really
was
seemed-
like footage of protests that they co-opted
Yeah. Go on.
to show like the descent into chaos.
Uh-huh.
And like footage of like at one point they probably used footage of actual police in present day marching on the streets saying like something about like governments like locked down on citizens who wanted to know the truth or whatever.
Possibly.
Sounds
It
good
was
to
it
me.
was all happening pretty fast, but you basically nailed it.
Okay.
And also with that because it opened with that narration. Okay, let me go from the beginning actually. So what you
Please.
missed
Sorry,
before that
real quick, because before I forget, was the sound mix on the priest's voiceover insane in your
Insane.
theater
Yes.
as well, Scott? Okay.
Yes,
I
that's
could
what I was
barely
just about to cut
understand
myself
what you're
off
saying.
for. So let's talk
Okay.
about that first. Yes. So to open the movie, that narration comes in, and I'm like, "There's something wrong with the sound in this theater."
Me
Yeah.
too. I thought so too. I thought it was an
Because-
old woman talking through like a walkie-talkie. It was very
It's like-
strange.
And
It's
it was like
they
doubled
added some
too.
weird. Yeah, it was like they added some weird stereo effect you would use for like an acoustic guitar or something. It was like not for vocals. It was very.
I bet
strange.
whatever laptop speakers that they were listening to the final cut of this movie on, they did not notice that.
yeah.
Yeah, it could be.
very
But I was
weird.
definitely concerned, so I was happy once Buck Williams came on and he was talking normal.
Yeah, that feeling of danger when you're in a movie and you don't know if like the projectionist is like out to lunch or something. But yeah.
Well,
then
I did go to the good big theater in town where the projection's always on point. That's why I wanted to go there.
Great. Yeah. What was your theater experience? I'm sorry, I feel like we keep cutting you off, but what was your theater experience like? Because ours was sold out.
Really interesting.
Yes, it was the final showing, but
we have a theory on it too.
In Wilmington, it was playing at 3 different theaters, and I went on Sunday or Saturday, and the only show times at each of those theaters was 3 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
Which that probably has something to do with their understanding of the market, because you're definitely getting a better deal if you're renting out the theater at 3 compared to the evening.
Right.
But there was probably like 40 people in the crowd, and it's like a big theater.
Okay.
So
yeah,
and mostly elderly people.
Sure.
Ours was
my experience.
I think what happened, because Ash, you bought the tickets.
I did. I wasn't going to, because I was going to see if anyone else wanted to come with us, but in the morning I just got the urge, the Aries urge to buy tickets ahead of time, even if I looked and there was only like 4 tickets sold. And so I had our total pick of seats, and I got us seats in the back row because I was like, maybe I'm going to take notes on my phone. I don't want to bother anyone.
And this was T-minus less than 7 or less than 12 hours.
Yeah, it was like it was probably like 11 in the morning, and we were going to go at 7. So yeah. And so it seemed pretty wide open to me.
Yeah.
But then we obviously invited Nate and Dave of Loose Lips podcast, who are, very good friends of ours and love seeing these movies too. And Nate kind of spontaneously, like a couple hours before showtime, was like, yeah, I can make it. Like, I'll come with you guys. And he looked online, and there was no room at the inn.
Yeah.
Suddenly
sold out.
Something happened in like 5 hours where there was no seats available.
Like a thief in the night.
Like all a thief in the night.
All the tickets were bought up.
So we were like, did the fucking Sorbos like literally buy all the tickets?
So yeah, conspiracy theory 1, which, if there's any takeaway from the movie, it's that all conspiracy theories are legitimate and probably the truth.
Right.
Theory number 1 was that the production company would see if a movie screening was going to sell out. And if it was too low, would buy the tickets and then resell them or something. Yeah. That was my theory, because that's what sports teams do to claim sellout games and shit. Right. But then they just resell them. But I think what actually happened is that churches were, because it was a Sunday.
Right.
Yes.
It was
probably well, let's, this movie's showing. Let's all get a group together and go. Let us know who wants to go, and then we'll buy the tickets at 4:00 on Sunday.
Yep. I think that's what happened.
I think that's probably what happened too. There was some kind of call to action at the end of a church service, a big church service.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it did seem like most of the theater, it was a very tribal crowd. Lots of large groups of people who were hanging out. We saw one huge group of people just hanging out outside the theater talking about the movie.
Probably 25
afterwards.
people.
Yeah. So yeah, what were we talking about?
Julian and I also ended up sitting in between what appeared to be a family that went together, because I bought tickets in the back. I wasn't even really I wasn't even really thinking, but I realized that I left one seat at the end when I bought our tickets, which was not terrible, but not the most considerate thing to do. But again, the theater was completely empty when I bought the tickets, so I really didn't think anything of it. And we sat down, and there was an old guy to my left and an old couple to Julian's right.
Yeah.
And
they got up and left together.
And we were like, oh man, we just sat in between a family of or a group of 3 that wanted to see Left Behind together. I mean, we were a little late. I mean, had we known, we would have just moved over one. But it was too late for that when we got there. I'm surprised he didn't sit with the other 2. We just would have sat down at the whatever 2. Anyway. It was, I just didn't expect it is all. It was really a sold out crowd. They were people, groups were split apart.
Polycule.
I
think that's what we sat in. And they're probably trying to welcome us into there.
There you go.
Yeah.
You know what, too? Some people just love the aisle seat.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. This was not an aisle seat.
Well, it was technically the aisle in the very back to the gap. But no, you're right.
Yeah,
it was
there
technically
that
all the way
weird-
on the end.
There's like a big landing for like a wheelchair or something.
Yeah. We were in the very back row. Yeah. So that was the theatrical experience where we saw Left Behind. I noticed people were kind of like, when someone would say something like, oh, well, so you're telling me that a computer is giving us the model for how we should react to this? I every so often someone would be like,
Yeah, or it got a lot of laughs when people were like, oh, I'm not jokes like, I'm not scared of the devil, I have a teenage daughter. Like, they didn't say that
Yeah.
exactly, but there were a lot of jokes like that.
yeah. And when Dirk was like, oh, I'm not afraid of being crazy, but I'm not a conspiracy theorist.
Right.
Everyone was like, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah, they laughed at
A
that
lot
in
of
my
like
theater,
coffee,
too.
like a lot of coffee mugs you would get on like the QAnon online
The
store.
QAnon Shopify store.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
favorite crowd reaction in the movie is, do you remember, since we're talking about Dirk Burton here, when he shows his conspiracy board to Buck Williams, and
Yeah.
it shows like the interconnected corporations, that looks fairly intense, but like honestly less than what the actual like Monsanto board would look like.
Right. Yeah.
The woman, like probably a row behind me, goes, "Oh my God." She had never even considered the possibility that these
It's also-
corporations could be connected.
It's also like a fictional movie. I mean, honestly, a more intense chart is if you just like look at how the fucking Coca-Cola company. If you just pull up a list of what they all own,
Yeah.
like that's actually a more intricate chart than the one
Yes.
that is like displayed in the movie.
Yeah. So it was
It's
like
not really
the-
a conspiracy.
the dual, just the two things going on of her both like having never seen something like that before and taking it as reality
Yeah.
in this
Yeah.
Rapture fan fiction movie.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Pretty great. The biggest crowd response on my end, though, was the first time that they made it clear that they were comparing the prediction of the second wave of vanishings to the second wave of COVID.
That was
and-
insane. The best line in the movie. We should. When who is it? Buck says, "Come to think of it, do you know, or does anyone you know someone who's vanished?"
Did you know anyone personally
Right. Yeah.
who vanished in the second wave of vanishings? Or do we just like, I don't have the exact quote written down, but basically just like, yeah. Or have we just heard reports about it? Do you
Right,
know
yeah.
anyone personally who's been
Which was
vanished in the second
amazing
wave?
to me because my friend I went with had to remind me because I was like, wait, what? And he had to remind me because I assumed this was more of a thing in North Carolina. Well, maybe I shouldn't assume, but that people, a lot of conservatives were saying that the numbers were fake for the second wave,
Oh
Right.
yeah.
that they were higher than
Of coronavirus, right?
But for
Not
me,
vanishings.
probably for you two too, like I knew more people like first and second hand that got COVID with the second wave than with the first one.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
like I
absolutely,
thought the
would say.
numbers were wrong in the opposite direction. I was like, I think there's actually more deaths and sickness from this
Yeah.
right now than what
Well,
they're
also in
reporting.
like in places where there already wasn't a lot of testing to begin with, it was like there was even less testing for the second wave.
Right.
And literally, like, if you're there and you get coronavirus, you're just like, oh, I'm just really sick.
Right. Well, I think that then we could reveal that a big theme in this movie is that I would say essentially in this movie, the rapture was a metaphor for COVID.
Was it?
I mean,
You
not
think
all
so?
the time. Not all the time.
No, yeah, I'm kidding.
Oh, okay. Sorry, no, my ability to detect irony is completely gone.
I know.
It's
This movie
literally
was
completely gone.
devastating.
It kind of was. It was actually, we'll get to this, but it was actually a bit devastating to my psyche. Julian and I were very depressed after watching this movie. I've had to watch like 3 movies since then to remind myself that like people, believe in like beauty and truth.
Yeah.
Wow.
But anyways, it was basically an extended metaphor for COVID. Although they did reference COVID as a thing that happened before this. Like in the film, they were like, oh, it's like, you remember how the pharmaceutical companies got rich after COVID? Well, they got even richer after the vanishings.
I'd give like I'd love to see ads for like pills you can take to not vanish.
That's actually really
anti-disappearing
That would be
pills.
really funny.
As with a number of things, there's some kind of opposite messaging from the last Left Behind movie we had, where it's like exciting to be invisible. You're like, you don't want to disappear.
Yeah.
Dude, what if the pills were just like literally just pieces of metal that you would swallow to be as heavy as possible so you wouldn't vanish?
Lead pills.
Yeah, like literally lead pills. That would be so awesome.
God, if this movie was able to commit to anything, they would have gone down that path.
I agree. But
oh man,
the vanishings were a metaphor for COVID. Clearly, this was a movie that was really, if anything, about the COVID crisis. I will say, to be fair, that there were some things here and there that I was a little sympathetic to, as over the course of the pandemic, there are certain aspects that I have become sympathetic to early conservative reactions to elements of the government treatment of the pandemic. But overall, it was very bizarre.
Yeah, it didn't. I mean, it definitely was about COVID, but it felt more like it was about COVID conspiracy theories,
Right.
than anything else. Like it was using the vanishings as this like very tenuous metaphor for coronavirus, but using that as a way of saying like, oh, our theories about the vanishings are clearly correct.
Yeah.
So in a way it's like it's pretty much what you said, but I also felt like it skewed more towards like the whole thing was a metaphor for COVID conspiracy theories.
That's a really
instead
good
of
point.
COVID itself.
That's a good point, because the movie really is more about having extended scenes where people say things
Yes.
more than an actual plot driving about the rapture or anything else.
It felt like being in a Uber ride for 2 hours where the driver is just paraphrasing every conspiracy theory video they've watched.
yes.
Because it was like, it was literally like, I mean, this is part of the reason why it was so depressing, because it was watching like the dumbest person tell you how the world works and them like getting so close to like so close to figuring it out and then just veering off into the wrong direction.
Yeah, like when
As most conservatives conspiracy theories that involve like, you know, capitalism and like
yes.
a few people owning everything.
Right.
Very
And
specifically
when they brought in the
when
Great Reset, I was just like, I want to leave the theater.
Just with the Eden app, how they have to use the Eden app for the one world currency now, and the way they explain the problem with it, you're like, that's just the problem with money.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I agree this isn't good, but it's because you're just describing capitalism.
And they're lumping in like the Chinese social credit system that conservatives love to like hand wring about.
Oh, is that what that was? I didn't know. I didn't know what
yeah.
I was talking about.
Which is like, I mean, granted, I don't know much about, but in America we have a thing called the credit score.
Credit score.
Which you can't do a lot of things if it's too bad. And it will just go down for no reason.
Absolutely.
If you don't use your credit cards enough, if you use your credit cards too much, if you make your payments on time, it'll just go down.
Right.
And they also, there's also a cool thing now where a lot of stores, and granted, this is, I see more in liberal LA than anywhere else, stores that just don't take cash.
Right.
As a deterrent towards homeless people coming in.
Right. So I just to back up a little bit, one of the biggest story updates about this new Left Behind movie versus the original scope of the books and the original movies is that the idea of Eden in the original books and the original movies, Eden is literally a plot of land and a plan to create an endless world food supply. Fittingly, in the new Left Behind Rise of the Antichrist, this Eden project is something more important than food. It is a social media network where all people are expected to use. And this
cool.
will then lead into the mass adoption of the one world currency and payment system that is, of course, a part of rapture prophecy. But that is just from a plot point. That is one. I honestly thought it was kind of inventive and like sad and fitting. That, I mean, I remember saying to you on the way out of the theater, Julian, like, yeah, of course, Eden is a social media platform now because that's literally more important than world hunger.
I'm a little sidebar. Is Eden so? Is like the creation of a never-ending food supply for the world like a sign of the end of times?
Well, or
is that just totally a creation of the Left Behind?
You know, I can't answer that specifically because I don't know the like intimate details of Bible prophecy. But to me, I read that as more. I mean, a thing that's we're nailed with over and over again is the fact that peace in the Middle East is that is a factor of Bible prophecy. So
yeah.
My guess is, although I could be wrong, is that in the books, the reason that Eden was placed in Israel was to give another plot reason for Israel to be like a sought after promised land that like, you know, would then become the target of all these like attacks and things like that. So I don't know about an end to world hunger specifically being part of prophecies. I do know that basically world peace is a harbinger to the end of times. So that was my understanding.
Yeah, they do make it clear in all of them that like creating world peace and ending poverty is a bad thing. But then you're like,
yes, it is.
What's the thing that happens if you do that? You might have war and poverty. Like that's their only. It just like loops around. It's like, no, we can't ever have this because then we'll have this.
Well, this is something that we keep mulling over and over again as we cover Left Behind, and the new way they covered it in Rise of the Antichrist was very weird as well. But again, do we want world peace or do we not? I think the answer is like, yes, we do. But the reason that some people want it is they know that that's going to activate the good ending. Like we're playing like Silent Hill. And, you know, like the good ending, of course, is the end times. We want the end times.
Right.
But along the way, really bad things are going to happen. I think because, again, we're going to be gone.
It's like those brilliant leftist thinkers who wanted Trump to win to make America as bad as possible.
Yeah, accelerationism.
So that leftism could somehow rise up.
Right.
So all the people who don't like guns can take over.
Right. Yes. 100%. It's all, everything right now is sort of like a battleground of accelerationism. It sort of just depends on like which side of accelerationism you're on.
Yeah.
And
to clarify, I do not like guns either. I meant I don't think the people who are anti-gun will be able to take over.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. You're also not claiming that you yourself are going to get into the White House.
Yeah.
You know? Like, be able to just like put someone in a chokehold in order to take over the United States government. But we've been really spending a lot of time in the Christian accelerationist point of view by being a part of like just being immersed in the Left Behind universe. And in this movie, again, Eden, the very sought after Israeli creation, that is going to usher in some kind of global harmony or world peace, is literally a social media app. It's Facebook. It's Twitter. And it has tens of millions of users. And they are working on a system called Eden Pay. And what this is going to do is because every world government is going to collapse. I remember them saying that more than 100 countries will be bankrupt within the next 60 days.
Yeah.
So Eden Pay is like a total just like world bailout. And by providing this currency option, the world will not be in poverty somehow. I don't ask me to connect how those two things are going to happen, but that's just how they explain it in the movie.
Yes, every single country in the world is immediately like, this is convenient for me. Like every shop everywhere is like, this works for me.
Yeah,
like any village, town, city, anywhere in the world.
Right. I do want to say at this point might be a thing to bring up. This is basically the most sympathetic New World Order related conspiracy theory that I like. This is the one I'm the most sympathetic to. I find it really weird when PayPal or Venmo or various payment services that are not mandatory, but are just, becoming the norm. Banks, things like Chase Bank. These are privately owned banking systems that nevertheless a lot of people use and are basically standard, especially in a world that's getting more and more cashless. I think it is morally wrong for them to ban people from the service for expressing views that are not politically correct. I remember Kanye West and like various other people, you'll hear about sometimes like, in the case of like conservative thinkers being like, oh, I'm now banned from PayPal.
Yeah.
I personally
have not heard
think that that's wrong.
Crazy.
No, that does happen. Kanye, Kanye is not the most reliable narrator, but he said that after he said the things he did, Chase Bank decided that they would no longer have his bank account.
That's a good way to teach someone to not be anti-Semitic.
Well, exactly. That is 100
ban them from a bank after they say anti-Semitic things.
That is exact discourse that was happening, and also, I mean, I have heard of I can't remember what it was. There was some transphobic, like legitimately transphobic organization that was like banned from PayPal. It was like some sort of probably like teal funded thing. Like I don't really understand what it was. But I do
think it's different to ban an organization versus an individual, though, because like
that could be. I don't know the specifics.
You need money in this world, as Left Behind: Rise of the Antichrist pointed out.
Right.
So like, I don't know. There's other banking options for a big organization. For an individual, though, that is fucked up.
That's a good point. I can't remember the specific story I'm pointing to, so I don't. That's actually a really good point. I don't remember if it was like an individual or some sort of established organization being denied service. But I find it a problem when not all, but some leftists or liberals will see like a conservative voice being banned from like PayPal, and they'll be like, well, even Twitter, but I think Twitter's a little more arguable than like PayPal. But they'll be like, well, PayPal is a private, institution. Like they reserve the right to do business with whoever they want. That's just how it is. Like maybe be less objectionable next time and you could stay on the platform. Yeah. I personally think that that's really bad and sets a bad precedent for payment services specifically. So the idea that there would be a mandatory electronic payment service that this has not happened yet, but could theoretically dominate the world exchange of finances and stuff. I do think that is dangerous because I do think that you can't get banned from using cash,
Right.
So that is why I can understand the conservative/libertarian desire to continue having cash or some sort of like fiat something as a backup to all these electronic exchanges. That makes a lot of sense to me. That being said, Eden Pay and the Eden app are pretty ridiculous scenario for them to deliver.
Well thought out plot device of just somebody literally coming in and saying, we're inventing a new currency.
Yeah.
Don't really think that's how that works.
Probably not.
Another new invention for this movie.
Maybe the rules changed with the vanishings.
Yeah. Well, clearly. Another new invention for this movie was having the pilot character, Rayford Steele, getting the pastor to convert to Christianity, which does not happen in the other versions.
Nope.
But Rayford Steele is who Kevin Sorbo has cast himself as playing this time.
Yes. I wrote a note about that in my very badly scrawled notes that I wrote in the dark. One of the first things I wrote down is that Kevin Sorbo as Ray has no doubt. Kevin Sorbo is the star and director of this film. He takes over as Rayford Steele, who is a very, well, I don't know about very, but a more complicated character in the original plot. He is a character that is staunchly atheist, and like many people during the who survived the rapture, has a very conflicted idea of faith, and maybe even comes around to Christianity, as he very explicitly does later in the story. Sorbo's Rayford Steele pretty much immediately is just all in. There's like a scene where he's like, okay, but even like the very beginning of the movie, he's already defending, he has not been a Christian in his life, but as soon as his wife disappears, he's like, well, do you think we should give her theories some more credit? To his daughter.
Yes, they make her the more incredulous one.
Yes, the daughter was by far the more incredulous one. That's flipped, right? Isn't the daughter a little more curious?
Yeah,
in the original film trilogy? She was
the one being a little more like, maybe we should think about what mom said. I felt like,
right. Completely flipped, which is like, I mean, that's a Christian movie trope that we've experienced a million times, where the star of the film, who in this case is probably the most established like Christian film celebrity, tends to portray himself as the one with the least doubt.
Yeah. So like, even though that was like a little bit of eye rolly that Kevin Sorbo did that for himself, I was glad that they did that for Chloe, because maybe my favorite scene in the movie is her digging up her mom's grave.
That was awesome. I forgot about that.
She was buried like 25 feet deep.
They did not want that bitch climbing out.
That was so funny. I was like, how the fuck are they going to get back out of this hole?
I said the same thing.
Chloe, we referenced her digging her mom's grave, because that was the one thing that would prove to her that the rapture did indeed happen. Because now this was something that I was a bit surprised by. Do the bodies of the dead, obviously we know that living bodies seem to go to heaven because of the famous scenes, with people sitting in their seats, like a fully laid out like shirt and jeans and shoes and socks, like disappearing on the plane. Do dead bodies go to heaven?
And are they dead in heaven? Are you just dead?
Are they dead in heaven?
You're an old rotten skeleton in heaven.
But I mean, like, by this logic, you would not even be like, why would you need your dead body?
Why don't you just disappear when you're dead, like a video game character?
Are you just like a floating orb or something when you're up there?
Well, you get a new body when you go to heaven.
Until you get your body?
Well, sure. I agree. You probably get a new body when you go to heaven. And I get that, the disappearance thing, like it's mostly a metaphor, right? Like the vanishing. What was so weird about this movie is like, again, I don't know the intimate details of like rapture prophecy to fully say that like the Bible says that no, people are going to disappear without their clothes. And their clothes are going to be left behind on the ground. Really, left behind is more of a metaphor, right? It's a modern day visualization of what this might look like. So it's a very striking visual metaphor to be like, oh, you're gonna look at the seat on a bus, and it's just gonna be someone's clothes sitting there, and they're disappeared. Like, it's a metaphor. Yeah. So what this movie does is it takes that metaphor to a bizarre area where it just didn't need to go.
Don't go there.
Don't go there, girlfriends. Like, why do dead bodies disappear? We don't need that.
Yeah.
It's like, from an artistic perspective, it doesn't make any sense other than to, prove that this is actually happening.
It's true that we didn't need it in a narrative sense or like just a practical sense. But as for something happening in the movie, it was very important to me.
That was. I agree.
I think their whole repurposing of the vanishings to be a coronavirus narrative, they had to like make up so many new things. Right. Like, remember how Buck is clearly saying Carpathia in so many scenes, and they overdub him saying Stonegal.
Yes. Did you catch that?
Okay, that was I was so confused because I thought the guy who was supposed to be like the younger, sharper, handsomer Joe Biden was supposed to be Carpathia, was supposed to be the Antichrist, but then it was actually the Zelensky guy.
So I think they just had to keep fucking writing shit to keep up with their own, like, trying to make commentary on present day happenings. And I feel like the dead body being raptured from the casket was something that they just had to do because they had written they had written this story of like, oh, people don't actually know what the vanishings are, and like they have all these theories and stuff.
That's a good point. Because in this movie, in trying to make that disease as vanishing, comparison, then they had to sort of change people's in the story's understanding of what the vanishings actually were.
Right.
But I agree. One thing, and we actually don't 100% know this for a fact, but what it seemed like to us is that there were many instances in the movie that were clearly overdubs where people would talk about Stonegal being the Antichrist. And it was clear that a word other than Stonegal was being said.
Right.
And we assumed that it must be that they originally were saying that Nikolai Carpathia was the Antichrist. And they changed it to Stonegal, who's supposed to be this like media mogul. Yeah. And it was like a false, like it was like a red herring. Because at the end, Nikolai is the Antichrist, as it says in the books.
Yeah.
But they do this extended red herring where the guy who they've built up to be like, I guess like a George Soros type. I'm trying to think of who the modern day.
I think he was supposed to be like Elon Musk, but this was like.
Yeah, or like a Peter Thiel, but
they're just random tech.
Exactly.
CEO.
Yeah, tech CEO who has, he's in behind the Eden Project and behind many things.
Yeah.
But it was very weird. That was like one thing that was like just that and the weird voiceover sound.
Oh my God.
Were the two things that were the most technically weird about this otherwise polished movie.
I would love to like just talk to somebody who worked on this movie about how the production worked out, because I feel like this is one of those movies where they shot like certain scenes and then like 2 years later they started it up again.
Maybe.
Because so many, or like did a bunch of rewrites halfway through, like after some test screenings, because there was just the narration would talk over people talking.
Yeah, that was
at
odd.
Like key moments.
That was odd.
Where the narration would be, it felt like watching like a Jehovah's Witness movie.
Yep.
And it would like say things like, it would tell you what characters were thinking and why they were doing when it was like blatantly obvious.
Yeah.
Like when Buck had to go back and get the laptop, he's like sneaking around getting the secret laptop before the FBI gets it. And as he's doing this, which we know because this was explained that like this was sort of foreshadowed 15 minutes earlier in the movie.
Yeah.
The priest is narrating saying Buck was scared, but he had to go back and find the laptop.
Yeah.
The lead laptop found in that was hidden
show,
in the air
don't
shaft.
tell, dude.
But then like he knew that the FBI would have their hands full decrypting the other laptop, which 15 minutes earlier, a character says, oh, the FBI is going to have their hands full decrypting this fake laptop. And he would say things like, but Buck smiled to himself thinking about what they would find after they decrypted.
You can just show him smile.
So crazy. It was like somebody reading a children's book to you.
Yes, it was. That one scene where Buck and young Braden Sorbo's character, Connor, were talking to each other. They're having a conversation. The movie literally faded out their dialogue, and the priest started doing a voiceover talking about what they were talking about.
And then
very
15
strange.
minutes later, when Buck is talking to the UN, telling them about the Antichrist takeover,
right?
You can't hear anything he's saying, and the priest is saying, Buck told them all about how the Antichrist is going to take over. It was so crazy. That and the redubbing of Stonegal over Carpathia or whatever. And there was one more fucking thing that was like so weird. It's such like a clear indicator that they had like totally different idea for this movie. Damn, I can't remember.
Hard to say.
Yeah.
Well, it comes to mind, but when that happened with Brayden, that was the first really noticeable time to me where I was like, damn, what is going on between Brayden and Sorbo? Because this is not the confident young lad from Instagram. He is not looking very cool in this movie.
That's very interesting. I have thoughts on this as one of Brayden Sorbo's number one fans. So first of all, I will say I've been following Brayden Sorbo's bodybuilding journey intently over the past year. This movie was filmed in his bulking and long hair phase, which
he looked insane.
He honestly, I felt a little bad because right now his hair is short and he looks like shredded.
Yeah.
And I think that this filming kind of caught him at just like in a time in his like recent life where I didn't like his aesthetics as much, because when he was bulking, you know how like people who are really into bodybuilding, they do periods of bulking and cutting.
Yeah.
Well, I remember, I can't believe I know all this. Like, this is insane. I feel horrible about this, but he was in this like period of a lot of bulking, which he then cut and got really, he had to like grow a lot of muscle mass in order to like shred and get great definition.
Yeah.
But in his bulk phase, it honestly looked really unnatural. Like his head looked too small for his body. Like I remember like, I remember showing him to some friends and being like, why does his head look tiny? And I'm like, he's bulking right now. I'm like talking about
snatching your phone back.
Yeah, I'm like, he's bulking right now. Shut up. No, so they literally, and also I don't know. I tend to aesthetically prefer men with shorter hair than longer, but they literally got him in the bulking and long hair phase. Whereas right now, I honestly think he looks like a model. He looks great. So I think that's just unfortunate. I agree with you, Scott. I don't think he came across as very cool or handsome in this movie.
I remembered the other thing.
Oh yeah, please.
It is the fact that that Nicolae Carpathian is a Romanian president.
Aha.
And he has like a southwestern United States accent.
Very weird.
No hint of any sort of attempt at doing an accent. Nobody ever talks about him coming in from Romania.
It's very weird.
It felt like they had just that's why the whole movie was very disjointed whenever it tried to tell the story.
Right. Like they weren't going to do, it's like they were going to blow the whole Romania thing.
Yeah.
And then they brought it back at the last minute or something like that.
I'm just so curious how this movie got like hodgepodge assembled together. Because it feels like they started it before coronavirus and then had to rewrite everything to make it about coronavirus.
It would be nice to talk to somebody
Really
who worked in post-production on it the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be great. If anyone listening to this podcast has done that, no, they would have told us already.
Also a very, very cheap movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm truly blown away by
hell?
how cheap this was. Especially the scene where the daughter dreams she goes to heaven and Jesus is there, and it like literally looks like it was shot in like a bedroom.
It looks like Believe.
Yeah.
It looked like, or I Believe. I forget. What's the movie you love, Scott? Is it just called Believe? I Believe. Yeah.
I Believe.
Yeah.
It looked like I Believe or The Girl Who Believes. I actually think The Girl Who Believes in Miracles was higher budget than this movie.
It looked crazy.
It really looked weird. The car chase at the end. Now, listen, I know that like these are the hard, when you're doing a low budget production, vehicles and things like that are obviously that's where the strings show the most. I get that. I'm very sympathetic to that. That being said, the car chasing was just like two minivans that had just gone to the car wash, chasing each other. They did rent a plane.
Yeah. And they're chasing each other on a completely empty stretch of highway in like rural Alberta, Canada.
Where this was shot, confirmed. So it was a very cheap movie. Again, nowadays you can rent these digital cameras that look very pristine. This is refinement culture, folks. This is the lack of personality that comes with our modern day refinement culture, where you can look refined on a lower budget, but your film ends up just looking clinical, like a corporate training video or a Jehovah's Witness film.
There's just no style.
I don't even think it's fair to compare to Jehovah's Witnesses because they do have a style. Like that is their style, and they stick to the aesthetic, and they want that aesthetic. And this is just like This is what's available to us.
And just like Nikolai Kaprathian's giving his big speech where like he explains everything that's going to happen and then it happens and how he's like fooling the world and everything. And they do this weird thing where it just like desaturates and then goes back to normal color. It's like the most basic like free Premiere plugins you could put in.
Yeah. Very non-ambitious.
Yeah, it was
a very unambitious film.
Yeah. I mean,
although at least that ended
Kevin
with like
Sorbo.
real squibs and like we saw the two people get shot, which is
There were squibs.
does
I
not
forgot
usually
about that.
happen in Christian movies. You don't usually watch the person die.
Yeah. This ain't your grandpappy's Christian movie.
Well, it actually is your grandpappy's Christian movie. Because with that car scene, with the car chase scene, once it started, I was like, oh, some action, great. And then, like, you know, within 1 second, I was like, oh my God, this is so boring. Please just watch one Eurocrime movie before you shoot this.
They took one turn and threw the tail off completely.
But the elderly couple who was like right in front of me, basically, I could like tell, I could like feel their tension. Like they were, it was working for them. So I was like, well, I guess maybe I'm the wrong audience for this. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
I feel like I shouldn't be at this point, but
I mean, my mom, who is not a conservative Christian, but she does not like suspense movies. So I think any like degree of suspense for her is very intense, including like a car chase. So, you know, maybe if you're in that similar mindset, then that would have been enough suspense for you in this movie. But
from other recent movie going experiences, I am convinced there are still a lot of people, and this is not a knock against anybody, because, you know, movies are not the most important thing in the world. I can't wait to hear the blowback from that one. But there are still a lot of people who it feels like if you showed them train pulling into station, they would freak the fuck out in this day and age.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this was train pulling into station, the Christian film. That was about as much action as we got. I mean, this movie
with an hour and 58 minutes of the train station.
Yeah.
Of people
but not
talking
even the
in
train station. Just like they're in the bathroom at the train station having a conversation.
Yeah. Oh my God. That was so frustrating about this movie. And so many Christian movies these days.
Mm-hmm.
We get so excited to see them. And then it's literally just two people in a room talking, like, because they blow their fucking whole budget on like expensive cameras, nice lighting. Like the lighting was decent in the movie. Everything was like decent.
Right.
But it's just two people talking in a fucking room about whatever fucking thing they saw on YouTube the night before when they were writing the script.
Yes, the YouTubification of cinema.
Like the rapture happened. All these people disappeared.
I completely agree. I've noticed this. I do think this is a trend in Christian film, and I do think it was influenced by internet video and social media and the way that like the action of our lives is reading and exchanging thoughts. Like, think about it. That is like the primary action of most people's lives, like in the first world. Yeah. That's where our drama is. That's where our fights are. You know, we get in, we scream at the Thanksgiving table because there's like, you know, somebody's a leftist and somebody's a Trump supporter. Like that's like the drama of our lives. There's like people posting at each other.
Yeah.
So it's almost hard to imagine a movie, even a movie as exciting as one about the rapture, that isn't literally just like groups of people having like, you know, podcasts at each other. Like, listen, as a podcaster myself, obviously I want to see myself represented in film, but let's be honest, a movie that's just a string of scenes of podcasts happening.
It felt like it was just two people in a room talking, throwing as many fucking present day conspiracy theories at you as they possibly could.
Absolutely.
And then being like, also the Antichrist is coming because of all this.
Right.
It just like, really like, it did a blow to my hope for humanity.
I know.
As a person who's relatively detached from, I mean, you can't escape all of this stuff, but as a person who's not exposed to this on a daily basis, this was one of the most depressing movies I've seen in a very long time.
It depressed me too. Julian and I both left our shared theater experience feeling depressed. And the reason I was depressed was not because that the movie was, quote unquote, like misinformation or whatever. Like that's not even really my opinion on whether the information presented in the movie was fact or fiction is actually not really what depressed me. What depressed me was like that it was just like all human interactions are like sort of devolved to like sharing content at each other, half of which we look at each other and we're and like or look at the other person. You're like, I don't even know if that's like true or not.
It's just like
everyone living in their weird world of like content and like doing internet posts at each other all the time, like being a substitute for like human interaction. Like to me personally, that was what depressed me more than anything else.
Right.
Like I know this is a Christian movie. I'm not expecting like, people to like have sex in it or whatever, but like no romance, no blood, no action, no like tears or feeling or anything in this very charged situation about the world ending and the Antichrist coming to power.
Yeah.
Clinical, conversational, just information, just like snarky, like facts and stuff like that. It like genuinely made me think that like people are losing the ability to like relate or even socialize with each other.
Yeah.
I was very depressed.
But perhaps it's a statement on just some of the dangers of the rapture and what it'll be like once all the podcasters and good filmmakers have been raptured.
When you look at it like that,
we won't have anything to worry about.
I mean, it did make me feel that we are living in the end of days, maybe more than any rapture related media I've watched, because I was like, if this movie is how bleak and depressing it is to live in the end of days, and it reminds me so much of an aspect of interaction that I'm like regularly faced with, maybe we are in fact living in the end of days.
I think you should settle your mind by thinking about, so my friend I went to see it with, I was not as depressed. I was disappointed with the movie, honestly, but I was not as depressed because it was somewhat sparsely attended. It was pretty much all elderly people there. And my friend I was with had not participated in this type of experience before. So I was mostly like living vicariously through him. And I had told him before watching it, I was like, oh, dude, you got to watch this movie, Let There Be Light, before you go. It's so good. You'll get the idea of
So
what a
much
Sorbo
better than
film
this,
is
by the
like. Here's the thing, though. I'm glad he didn't, because like then he would have been as disappointed as I was. And I was thinking about it. This new Left Behind movie is like a Netflix original. They just like padded it out for no reason and added in this boring stuff. And you're like, oh, what? This budget seems lower than I was made to believe from the trailer.
Right.
Seems like there's some unnecessary dialogue in this to move the narrative along. Compared to Let There Be Light, which is like nonstop and is like a Tubi movie. So you just have to think about it as like Tubi content versus Netflix content. And there actually is as much, as much, if not more, Tubi content than Netflix content. But like they just have good content. They don't have to do any extra work. They have all this good content.
This is like the part in the end of the movie when they're like dropping the flyers. Giving hope.
Yeah, this is
like
you're
in the plane and me and Ash are on the street
and we're like,
the flyers.
What are these flyers?
That was so fucking stupid.
That was so stupid and funny.
Wow. And they dropped like all of their flyers on one block.
As if it wouldn't just like, they'd drop a box of flyers, it would just kill one homeless person and it would never get reported. No one would see the flyers.
So these flyers are, for the listeners, the flyers were in the back of the church and had never been handed out, and they were from the previous pastor who had them made up to explain to people everything that was going to happen after the rapture and in end times. And the flyers are all completely accurate, of course. And so the movie ends with what will become the tribulation force, I guess, flying up in a plane. Sorbs is flying, of course. And then they drop all these pamphlets just over whatever city they're around, which is... It's so funny that their ultimate idea that's going to work is just do what the Jehovah's Witnesses do unsuccessfully every day.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I want to connect this to the thing you were saying just before this, Scott, because first of all, I didn't even really realize that part of the reason I was so disappointed is because Let There Be Light, 2017? I'm pretty sure 2017.
That was that long ago?
It's funny. Yes,
I
but
saw
also
it in theaters.
yes, but it was. But also, when you think about it, that's like not that long ago compared to 2023.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like
we lost several years of our life,
right
between.
But
now
what I'm
and
trying
then.
to say is, not that long ago in the if you're looking at a graph of the human existence,
Yeah.
not that long ago, they made maybe a film that's in my top like 25 of all time. Like not just Christian movies.
Yeah.
Like one that not only defines the Christian genre, but to me is like a
Yeah.
profoundly fun and moving and intense theatrical experience. Like a very memorable movie.
Yeah.
That the Sorbos, that same people, Kevin, his wife Sam, even Braden, he's much younger in that movie, but even Braden is in that fucking movie. And they all together as a team made a genius film with lots of heart and blood. And yeah, you might be like, there's a lot of conspiracy and misinformation in this movie, but at least there's heart in it. Like they want to defeat ISIS in that movie. They're going to defeat ISIS.
That's where we were before coronavirus.
That's where we were. We were going to defeat ISIS.
Like you could see something that was just straight up propaganda again.
Yeah.
And walk away laughing, smiling. Then you watch this, and I personally am just like, I don't know if I want to be on this planet anymore.
Yes. And again, I would argue that the reason for that is not because they were saying things about COVID that I disagreed with. I would argue because, you know, in Let There Be Light, ostensibly I disagreed with some of the politics of that movie too.
You are a known ISIS supporter.
No, I've gone on the record many times on this podcast saying I would join ISIS if they would just return my fucking recruitment email.
As soon as they let gay people into ISIS,
yes,
you'll be the
I'll
first one to
there.
sign up.
Dude, I will be there.
You're petitioning the don't ask, don't tell ISIS policy.
You know, the I in LGBTQI stands for ISIS.
Oh, that'd be such a good shirt. Like LGBTQ ISIS.
KAI stands for ISIS. That's really good. Anyways,
I think people would take that the wrong way.
Absolutely.
Instead of just being a stupid ironic t-shirt.
Absolutely. No, you would be, yeah. Well, who cares? Maybe that would be fun. But what I'm trying to say is I would argue that the reason that this movie was so soul crushing to me was not because I disagreed with the attitudes on the COVID-19 pandemic, but because I thought that it was completely bloodless and just like churning and with no heart or imagination and just a series of snarkily presented YouTube videos strung together.
And I think a big reason for that is the fucking guy who played Buck.
Yeah.
Which we have not talked about at this point.
Yeah.
He was, I think, okay, so I saw Megan recently.
Right.
And I said, Allison Williams, probably the worst actress I've ever seen on the face of the earth.
Oh, wow.
I
haven't seen it.
Firmly
Me
believe
either.
that. She has one face that she makes. And she has two faces. She slightly furrows her eyebrow, or she just has her like neutral face, which has like a slight smile to it. Literally only two faces she makes in the entire movie. The guy who played Buck, I don't remember what his name is, but
I'm looking right
he
now.
is the worst actor I have ever seen in my life. That was the most insane, like, that was, I don't know. It feels like he was created in a lab to create like a snarky conservative's idea of like a snarky action hero.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've never seen somebody act with his head as much as that guy. Where he's like a fucking bobblehead. Every time he talked, it was just like bouncing all over the place.
Greg Perro.
And
I'm not
from the
familiar
first
with him.
scene, he had this like sass to him that I was just like, I already miss Kirk.
Yes,
Absolutely.
exactly. I was like, Kirk is such a little wiener, but he's
Yeah.
our little wiener.
And he's
Right.
good. There's a reason. I mean, you know, he didn't start on being in Christian movies. Like he was a fucking like.
There really is something
famous sitcom
irresistible
actor.
about how pathetic he is
I agree.
as like
Yes.
a leading man.
I agree.
It's very
But just in the
endearing.
direction too, you believed that he was a journalist. Like his character
guy was-
didn't suggest that, but they would show scenes where he's like doing journalism.
And he like
Right.
looks like he doesn't actually know what's going on in the world and he's trying to figure it out.
Right.
This guy was how I imagine Ben Shapiro sees himself when he looks in the mirror every day.
Right.
Like he was just a conservative's idea of like what a person you should listen to is.
Absolutely.
Which is just the most fucking obnoxious, like snarky, like built guy with like a beard, but like a weirdly like baby face at the same time.
Right.
A man of contradictions. But I hated him so much. And anytime he was on screen talking, it like made my skin crawl.
Yeah. I looked up his IMDb. He's had he seems to be like someone who has, at least at one point, tried to have been a Hollywood actor. He's had some small roles, like, a bit role in like The Walking Dead or in like various movies or things like that. Not huge. He was in Mean Girls 2 as a bouncer, like things like that. You know what I mean? Like, so he's an actor with an IMDb, but he's not been in anything that, is major.
Yeah. We need more Sorbos.
We need more
and Sorbo
Sorbos.
was kind of uninspiring in this movie too. I felt like
he was
such
you
like an
notice
innocent good guy.
How much he is both the director and one of the stars of this movie, just how much he directed himself to be seated.
Yeah, I feel like he's sick or something. He seems not well. Like, I think he has like a brain problem or something.
He was definitely lacking a spark.
I mean,
and then like the video at the end, which we'll get to, I'm sure, the message from him.
Oh yeah.
He just looked so much makeup caked on and was like so weird. It's like, feels like when like in school we learned about all of JFK's like medical ailments for some reason. Don't know why.
I never learned that.
But he was like a extremely sick man.
Oh, really? I did not know that.
Throughout his entire life. And it's just, that's what I think is going on with Kevin Sorbo.
It's funny because I feel like there's been a change for him. I felt like I noticed it in the cameo that we paid him to make for us. Where
some of the lights are on and no one's home.
And I felt like there was something different even from 2017. Like in Let There Be Light, which is, again, the touch point that I'm referring to here.
Yeah.
Like, again, I thought his character had like different layers. Like, yeah, it was like a, stupid Christian movie, but it's like when he was being snarky, I felt like he was snarky. When he was being sad at his like son's death, I felt that, even if he was like whatever. No, this movie, he was just sitting down and being like, well, what does it say in the Bible?
Yeah.
Like, it was very easy. No doubt, no depth to his character.
Yeah.
And again, just like bloodless. And I remember, in the cameo that again, we paid him money. I paid him money to record.
Yeah.
I don't want to put that on you guys. I'm pretty sure that was the part of our show that I financed. He was just, I gave him a promise. Oh, we're a fan. We like your movie, Let There Be Light. And the cameo he recorded for us was just like, oh yeah, you got to see this movie. You got to see this movie.
Yeah.
Like, it was just
this
like,
movie's coming out. I'm at a charity golf tournament with Larry the Cable Guy. Like, all these strange things.
I know that it was like just a moment in time, but I just got the impression of just like sort of a vacancy from him. And I mean, sure, actors might be like that, but then to their role, they fill that vessel with something real. And that's what makes them the way they are. But in this movie, I didn't feel that at all. I felt like he was being himself, and that himself was like very boring.
It's very weird. Yeah. I miss our old Sorbo. Do you remember when we first started doing this podcast?
Mm-hmm.
Our friend Hank, who just edited the show, Paul T. Goldman. A little shout out to them.
Very, very cool. Great job, Hank.
He bought that cameo from Kevin Sorbo, like saying hi to everybody, and he got him to do like Hercules.
Yes.
Yeah.
What happened to that?
What happened to playful Kevin Sorbo?
Yeah, good
feels
point.
sad. I think he's got brain fog.
There was a Hercules reference in this movie, though.
There was?
Yeah. Somebody
I didn't
mentioned
catch
it
that.
in the background, like early on.
That's interesting. I did not catch that.
I didn't catch that either.
It was pretty fast.
There was a Simpsons reference.
There was.
I remember when Dirk, the informants, he said like, if they unencrypt my laptop, they're going to find 30 seasons of The Simpsons on here.
Yes, that got a big laugh from the guy next to me with the giant beard.
Yeah,
giant
Duck
Santa
Dynasty
Claus
looking
beard.
ass.
Yeah, I just heard him go. He was like, and then I heard like a little whisper, and then he like leaned over to the person next to him and just goes, "He said The Simpsons."
Really?
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Really funny.
That's really funny.
I liked when his Buck's laptop, Dirk's laptop actually, that he picked up from Dirk after Dirk got exploded, was it was hit by a bullet. He just like immediately throws the laptop out. Basically, was like, you might be able to save the hard drive, dude. It's like one
Yeah, he
bullet.
does try to turn it on.
That was another hysterical chase where he like ran back down the stairs and the guys were chasing him, and he went into the elevator and they just gave up.
Yeah, it was like stealth. It was like the stealth scene in like Legends of Zelda Ocarina of Time, where like as soon as you're just not in the line of sight of the guards, they just
give up.
they just completely give up. It was
totally.
very much like
And
that.
he threw like the pallet down in front of the door, and then they like couldn't open the door. It was so goofy.
It was really weird. Yeah.
So goofy. And then he jumps into one of like 15 dumpsters in an alleyway.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy's like, the dumpster. And he unloads like 9 bullets in it. And then he's like, yeah, just making sure. And it's like that one specific dumpster
Very
is
weird.
the only one you're concerned about.
Very weird.
Not concerned enough to shoot it 9 times, not concerned enough to
open
it after shooting it 9 times.
It's like patently obvious that he's hiding somewhere because he exited the door 5 seconds like before they did.
Into the Alberta like tundra.
Right.
And they don't see him anywhere.
I'd rather be in Siberia personally. That place looks unforgiving. Oh God, I'm trying to think of what else from the movie that we
Other
should.
thing we should touch on is Sam Sorbo's role and Sam Sorbo's good friend's
Yeah.
role in the movie.
Sam Sorbo plays. I couldn't even tell you her character's name. Is she the woman that Rayford? Well, obviously she and Kevin as Rayford Steele, start to have a bit of a romance, but it doesn't even really get that far. Again, a pretty like bloodless movie.
But what
But
felt weird about this movie is that it really felt like the fucking how like every Marvel movie now or whatever, or like every reboot
yeah,
has to reference like the original movies or the source material in a way and be like winking at you the whole time, being like, you know what's coming up. Like this movie felt like you had seen the original Left Behind movies or you had read the books or something. And I think that's because it was just so low budget and it was just trying to follow the beats of the story. But like when Rayford Steele's ex-girlfriend, the flight attendant shows up and talks to him for like 5 minutes and then leaves. It just felt like, okay, here's the part where we bring her in. And everybody in the audience is supposed to be like, oh, that's her.
That's Hattie.
And maybe it's just because we watched all those movies recently, I was feeling that way. But if I had not seen any other Left Behind movies, except for maybe the Nicolas Cage one, which was like 8 years ago at this point, I would be totally fucking lost when they're introducing these people or when they're like referencing these things.
Yeah, why do
they do
need
nothing
that
with her character other than show that Kevin Sorbo could have gotten somebody who's like 50 years younger than him or whatever.
Yeah, she's throwing himself at him, but he's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, then Sam comes in. Apparently her character is named Amanda. I'm not sure if that relates to remember how in our review from the third movie, we were like, who is this woman who's with Rayford? That might be her. Okay. To be fair, I'm not going to check that right now because frankly, I just don't care that much, but okay, cool. But yeah, she's like a nurse in some sort of nursing home or hospice care place. And she's there with an old woman who seems to be a completely devout Christian who was not raptured for some reason.
It's been 5 years and both Sorbo parents are looking worse for wear.
I agree. I mean, things happen, but
I know people get old fast towards the end, but they're like in their like 50s, aren't they? Or like 60s?
Probably 60s.
Like they look pretty fucked up for, looking relatively attractive for how old they were just 5 years ago.
No, I know what you mean. It does feel like
look a lot more than 5 years older.
I know, yeah. It really does feel like a whole other era when Let There Be Light was made, and it wasn't really. It wasn't really that long ago. But I did think it was funny. Yeah, she's always with this character named Fern, who is like straight up just like magic black woman.
Yes.
Like a straight up like diamond and silk ass caricature of what a black woman is like.
So crazy. Of course, that got the biggest laughs from our audience.
Of course. People love
my
with
God.
all of her lines.
Wow. Yeah, the only black woman in the movie.
We did have a very diverse crowd. I will say that. We are in LA, which has a very diverse population,
Basically,
particularly
by that
among
you mean
the
either-
Christian population.
By that, you basically mean it was either white people or there was just seemingly one large Filipino church that
I
booked
think
it
there was
out.
also Latino people.
That's
that-
possible. Yeah. Okay. But you're right. More than
not
one
that
race.
it makes it any less problematic.
You're right. More than one race of people.
Yes,
for
but it was
sure.
it was a large multicultural audience laughing at a racial stereotype. So
Yeah.
we have made a little bit of progress.
Right. But
And she was just like so confident about how everything worked, and I was like, "You did not get raptured. Why is this your character?
that's a
You're
really
just
good
forcing
point.
in
Yeah.
the magical black woman character when it knows everything when you didn't, and how everything works when you didn't get raptured."
She honors the 10 Commandments. She's like, you need to honor your father, girl.
God, that was so infuriating.
That was infuriating. But it's like, why was this bitch not raptured? That's what I want to know. She should have
Yeah.
been raptured. Why in God's name? And I mean that literally. Was
Maybe
she
because she's so condescending. Maybe because she's so fucking condescending in the movie.
What? Oh yeah, I forgot that. I remember the priest saying something about like he was left behind to like
because
teach
I asked God.
others. Yeah.
No, but then that it was clear that was
Yeah.
a lie.
Yeah,
He
Yeah.
said that to save face, but it was clear actually that he had
yeah,
a lot of doubt.
yeah. Not a lot of rhyme or reason as to why certain people were left behind.
So they did mention that a lot of the like the majority of the military and police force had disappeared.
Really?
So that was a funny thing to
That's interesting.
make
Oh
a point
my
to
God,
say.
I wish I had seen that.
Yeah. They must have said that in the first 6 minutes because
Oh yeah, I think
Julian
it was
and I
in that
sat down
first
at
scene,
7:06 and we did not. I know we would have remembered that line, both of us.
So
One
are
of
we-
us would have.
So we're just supposed to be indiscriminately killing people
Yeah.
in order to get raptured. Because that seems largely what the roles of those two occupations is.
Yeah.
What'd you think of the All Souls Matter? And
that
God,
was- that
God
was
is
swaggy.
dead. I really liked the God is dead in lowercase spray paint on the wall and like the weird like musical stinger as soon as they showed it.
Yeah.
Yes,
It
I
was
did
like
like
a-
that reference. The All
And
Souls
something-
Matter graffitied on the church was a little intense and
Ugh.
surprising.
It was so funny to me that Kevin Sorbo saw a trail, like footprints of someone who was clearly like profusely bleeding going into a house, and he grabbed like his golf club. And I was like, what the fuck are you going to do? You just going to like finish them off when you find them or what? I don't know. I thought that was a funny movie
Yeah.
thing. I love cinema.
I love
So
cinema.
I'm trying to
I
get
love
at.
movies. I love them. They run this town.
They're the most, some people would say they're the most important things in the world.
I mean, they are the operas of our time.
Yeah.
They are the operas of our time.
Hey, the movie made me feel things. Long live the cinema.
I accidentally jokingly gasped out loud when it showed God is dead. Like I did it sort of like for myself, but then I didn't really realize that I was talking out loud. But I went,
There was another moment where both of our jaws dropped.
yeah.
What was that?
I'm sure I wrote it down, but yeah, I remember
It
we
was
like
crazy.
both like
It was
pointed at
somebody
the
saying
screen.
something. It was so crazy. I really liked the the thing about like, oh, that's why pharmaceutical companies got rich during coronavirus.
Yeah,
And it's
that was
like-
awesome.
It's like, you ever been to a fucking prosperity church?
Right.
Yeah.
Like, people are getting rich off shit all the time. That's just the way our world works. I'm not
Just
saying it's a
which one
good
of the-
thing.
Yeah.
It's not some big mystery as to why a pharmaceutical company would get rich during a global pandemic.
Yeah.
There's so many Christian movies too that we've covered where it's like, well, yeah, if we had universal health care, this wouldn't be part of the narrative.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm looking through my notes, and I'm pretty sure the part where we both had a moment together that no one else in the theater did was when somebody, I think Kevin Sorbo, was like, "Hey, famous atheist magician
Oh,
Penn
that was during the
Jillette."
final spiel.
Right.
Yeah.
Penn Jillette, even the atheist, he said that, if he saw a truck coming, about to hit a person at some point, you would. Oh yeah, you're right. That was in like the ending, where Kevin Sorbo literally filmed himself like
We got the
addressing the
bad
camera
ending.
directly. We got the bad ending.
He said, if you see me twice in this movie, you've done wrong.
Yep. If you see me once, then if you see me twice, then you've done wrong.
If
yeah.
you see a Huckabee,
Oh my God, then you are in for it, my friend.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, no, he makes an analogy where he was like, atheist magician Penn Jillette says that if you see a truck hurtling towards someone, at some point you would even if they didn't believe the truck was coming, that at some point you would still tackle them to get them out of the way. And that's what we as Christians have to do right now.
and then they would have a heart attack from having the vaccine.
Yeah, honestly, if that person's vaccinated, they're just like not worth saving because 2 days later they're gonna fucking have a heart attack anyway. So who cares? Yeah. At the end of the movie, they break the fourth wall by having Kevin Sorbo and famous talk show host Mike Huckabee.
Did yours have this, Scott?
Yep. Of course.
Yeah, I think
Did
everyone's
it like
did.
just like abruptly fade out where like clearly
Yes.
the credits were supposed to start and then it just went right into this?
And that is how
Very
the movie
strange.
started too. I meant to
Wait,
mention
really?
it earlier. Yeah.
Oh, shit.
So the thing is, the movie did not start right on time. They had their own Fathom Events trailer reel of Christian and Christian adjacent
I would
stuff
have
that
liked
was
to have
coming
seen
up.
that. That's a shame.
And then it did not very like ungloriously just kind of like faded into the movie basically. And like me and my friend looked at each other like, wait, is the movie starting? Oh, I guess the movie's starting.
Right.
And then it ended like that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very abrupt.
But yeah, you were saying, Ash, we were visited by two spirits.
We were visited by two evil spirits, Kevin Sorbo and Mike Huckabee.
Mike Huckabee's nuts.
Yes, you could say that if you if you wanted. They basically came out to say that it's clear we're living in the end times, that we need to do our part by preparing the way and letting people know the reality of what's going on. And Mike Huckabee was kind enough to lead us in a prayer. That he said that if we had just sincerely said that prayer with him right now, then we were basically guaranteed to be raptured.
Yeah.
Didn't say it quite like that, but that was sort of the vibe I got.
I cannot believe at one point in my life, I heard my dad say during, I think, the 2012 election, he said, someone asked him who he wanted to be president. And he said, I really like Mike Huckabee.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm just like, where did you get this was when it was like 15 people running for president on the Republican ticket. So maybe
Somehow
it
he
was the
zeroed
2016
in on-
election.
Like I would
Like
be
early
made more
on.
understandable if someone like preferred Trump at that point than Huckabee, because at least Trump like stood out in any way.
Yeah, yeah.
Huckabee's just this weird fucking like Christian
And
worm.
I was just like, did you just like throw a dartboard, like throw a dart, like close your eyes and throw a dart to pick who you wanted?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, I will say that if there was an election to replace like Jimmy Kimmel, I would vote for Huckabee.
Yeah.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
I do think his work on his his talk show Huckabee is very well done.
My dad has an affinity for late night talk show hosts, so I think that might be where
Well, that was before Huckabee. He recognized that
it was.
spirit in
Yeah,
Huckabee.
I think he really
Yeah.
did.
And by late night talk show, you mean one that is filmed at like 3 p.m.
He thought he was seeing a good future president. He was confusing it with seeing a good future talk show host.
Absolutely.
Right.
Right.
Fair enough. It was disappointing that Mike Huckabee wasn't actually in the movie. Like I was like, oh, I thought
I
you
know.
were gonna
That
like
would've
show
been cool.
up Sean Hannity style and let there be light. But
Yes.
no, you're
Oh.
just telling me about prayer at the end.
Yeah, unless it would have been cool if he played the guy in the "So You've Been Left Behind" video.
That would have
Yeah.
been awesome. That's a good idea. They should have gotten a better cameo for that.
Yeah,
Okay. I will say that one of the final questions at the end blew my mind and ended up being one of my favorite moments. I don't think you and I got to talk about this yet, Julian. They said that a great discussion question to share with people is to ask yourself, what is your favorite rapture prophecy?
what's your favorite rapture prophecy that's come true?
That's come true. Yes, exactly.
Or you say like my favorite prophecy that's come true, and then you say something that has come true. Yeah. He was like, "What's your favorite prophecy that's come true?"
My favorite
And
is
then
the
you
pestilence.
ask, what's your favorite prophecy
that's come true. And that's a way to sort of bring people into the discussion about end times philosophy.
Which is funny because I watched a TikTok the other day about the Shags.
Oh, yeah.
Which
They got them on TikTok? Damn.
I was aware of them. I didn't realize just how brutal their upbringing was and
So I've
stuff.
heard,
And I didn't really, it was one of those TikToks where the person talking, you're like, this person's an empath.
They just make shit up.
But it was, I forgot that their dad consulted with a psychic who I think was his mom, who said you're going to marry a blonde woman, you're going to a close friend of yours is going to die, and your daughters are going to be in a famous band. And the first two things came true, and so he started the band, and it's fucking crazy. All three of those came true, and I was like, say what you will about the process, but the prophecies did come true.
The prophecies did come true.
There you go.
Yeah. And I was like, well, unfortunately, that's probably the only time that's going to happen. So
My favorite
I
end
guess
times
the Bible
prophecy-
prophecies are
My favorite
shit out
end
of
times
luck.
prophecy is the Shags recording my pal Foot. Well, we've had quite a bit to say about Left Behind, Rise of the Antichrist, in all of its strengths and flaws. But I ask ourselves now, that sentence make any sense? I'm going to leave it.
What's your favorite review
Yeah.
of the end times Bible prophecy movie, Left Behind?
What do we?
Something.
What,
What is it called? Rise of the Antichrist.
Rise of the Antichrist.
Hey,
What do
why
we
do
give
they
this
call
movie?
him
boys?
Christ and not Trist? That's what I've always wondered.
Antichrist?
The Antichrist.
Yeah, the Antichrist. Hard to say. It's probably some Latin thing.
Yeah.
Well, what do we think, boys? How do we rate this film officially? This brand new film.
And how do we know it's not? How do we know it's Christ and not Christ?
Well, there you go.
It's faith. That's what faith is all about.
Yeah. I felt strongly. I had strong feelings watching this movie. That's just the power of cinema for you. So based on that alone, I'm going to have to give this 300 or so out of 300 or so reasons why the rapture is coming true that you can see on leftbehind.com/proof.
/proof.
Proof?
Yep, that was it.
Oh,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The first, at least 100, because that's where I stopped, are just reasons why they think the book of Genesis is true, which I thought was a strange way into that.
that's funny. Did I show you that Ray Comfort book I bought from the store that was 50 reasons or 50 scientifically accurate facts in the Bible?
I don't know if you
And it
should
was
do that.
literally all just opinion, or people that thing where you basically have to assume that the Bible is factually accurate to begin with.
Right. Yeah, that's the assumption you're starting from.
I was pretty horribly depressed after watching this movie. I did not watch any other movies when I got home, but I watched some trailers for some Jackie Chan movies when I got home, and that made me feel better. I'm going to give this, 7 out of 7 sequels?
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
They are alleging that they're going to do 7 movies.
I can
in this
only
series.
imagine what number 7 is going to be. Christian Dogville, I'm assuming, at the budget that this was at. I can't imagine this is making money.
Jesus, yeah.
They had no money to begin with, so I'm looking forward to the final Left Behind book adapted in a empty warehouse with a bunch of tape on the ground showing which rooms are what.
It's just a one-man show. It's Braden Sorbo
Yeah.
and his one camera
Kevin Sorbo
setup.
playing all the players.
It's basically an IG live video.
It's it screams of when Sufjan Stevens was like, I'm going to record an album for
All 50
every state.
states.
And he stopped
Yeah,
after
right.
2 of them.
Yeah, right. Hey, good albums, but as for me, this film very much depressed me at my core. I had to watch 3 films from the BFI Sight and Sound list and they didn't make me feel better, by the way. They were good movies, but I straight up still depressed today. Obviously that means this is a profoundly impactful movie, and it was perfect in every single way. I'm going to have to give this film, fucking goddamn it, what do I even give this film? 100,000 out of 100,000 lines of code. Because he was very impressed that the Eden app had like 100,000 lines of code. It was very stupid.
Seems like, was he impressed because it was a lot or not that
I think it was because it was a lot.
I feel like that's probably not a lot.
I think that's not a lot.
For an app that's supposed to be like the world's app. I think you would have more than 100,000 lines of code. I don't know much about coding, but I can only imagine.
I know much about Bible coding.
Don't know much about Bible coding.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for listening to our exclusive review. We are one of the first Christian movie podcasts to cover Left Behind, Rise of the Antichrist. Thank you for being a part of it. And if this is your first time here, we invite you to go to boysbiblestudy.com and subscribe to our podcast and listen to our back catalog of episodes. Also, if you really like what we do and you want to hear more, patreon.com/boysbiblestudy. Any subscriber $5 or up gets access to all of our bonus episodes. Plus, special shout outs to our patrons at the $20 tier: Nicole, Marissa, Jeff, Jane, Kara, and Rhett. Our outro music is Oh My God by Mary. So from all of us here at Boys Bible Study, myself, Ash, my co-hosts, Scott and Julian, we would like to say, peace be with you.
Ash felt inspired that day as he gave the Patreon speech at the end of the episode. And also with you.
Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. I feel your love in me, it's coming from within. Oh my God, my devotion is so unwavering. Divine emotions when you enter me. Every day